Saturday mornings in the 70s held a kind of magic that today's generation will never fully understand. You would wake up early, fill a bowl with the sweetest cornflakes your parents allowed, and sit in front of the wooden-paneled console TV for hours of uninterrupted cartoon enjoyment. But for black children growing up in that decade, Saturday morning television meant more than just entertainment. Here are the cartoons and programs that defined the childhood of black children in the 1970s. Programs that were not just background noise, but genuine parts of your cultural education and identity formation. One, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids. Fat Albert wasn't just a cartoon. It was a mirror held up to black childhood that showed your reality with honesty, humor, and heart. Bill Cosby created characters who lived in an urban neighborhood that looked familiar, who dealt with real issues like peer pressure, family problems, and staying in school, and who looked like the kids you knew in your own community. Fat Albert himself, with his signature, "Hey, hey, hey" greeting, became an icon of positivity and wisdom despite coming from limited circumstances. The Junkyard Gang faced problems you recognized: bullying, poverty, making mistakes, and learning from them. Each episode ended with a lesson that actually made sense, rather than feeling preach or condescending. You remember Mushmouth's unique way of talking, Dumb Donald with the hat pulled over his eyes, and Rudy who thought he was cooler than everyone else. These characters felt real because they represented types of kids you actually knew. Parents approved of Fat Albert because it taught good values without talking down to children. The show validated your experience by showing that black kids from the neighborhood had stories worth telling, problems worth solving, and lives worth celebrating. When that theme song started, "Gonna sing you a song about my best friend," you knew you were about to spend time with characters who understood what it meant to grow up black in America during the 1970s. 2. The Jackson 5 cartoon. Seeing the Jackson 5 transformed into animated characters felt like magic for black kids in the 1970s, who already idolized Michael, Jermaine, Tito, Marlon, and Jackie. The cartoon debuted in 1971 and ran for 2 seasons, giving fans a glimpse into the fictional adventures of the famous brothers as they traveled the world performing music and solving problems. Each episode featured actual Jackson 5 songs, making it part cartoon and part music video before music videos really existed. You watched these animated versions of real black superstars have adventures that took them to exotic locations, meeting interesting people, and always finding a way to perform. The show reinforced that black musicians could be heroes, that talent and family bonds mattered, and that success was possible for kids who looked like you. You'd watch the cartoon and then go outside to practice moonwalks and spins, pretending you were part of the group. Parents loved that the show promoted family unity and hard work, while kids just loved seeing their favorite music group in cartoon form. The Jackson 5 cartoon proved that black entertainers were important enough to have their own shows, that their stories deserved animated treatment, and that representation could happen even in Saturday morning cartoons. When those animated Jacksons started singing, you sang along, feeling connected to something bigger than just a cartoon. 3. Schoolhouse Rock. Those 3-minute animated segments wedged between Saturday morning cartoons taught you more about grammar, math, and civics than some of your actual school classes. I'm Just a Bill, Conjunction Junction, and 3 is a Magic Number became earworms that helped you remember lessons through melody and repetition. While Schoolhouse Rock wasn't specifically about black culture, it was part of the Saturday morning ritual that black kids participated in alongside everyone else. You learned about how the government worked, how sentences were constructed, and how multiplication tables functioned, all while eating cereal and waiting for your favorite cartoon to come back on. The animation was simple but effective, and the songs were catchy enough that you'd find yourself humming them during actual school when the subject came up. Parents appreciated that you were learning something educational even while watching television. These shorts showed that learning didn't have to be boring, that music could make information stick, and that even commercial breaks could provide value. You didn't realize you were being educated because it felt like entertainment, and that's what made Schoolhouse Rock genius. Those songs are still in your head decades later, proving that the lessons actually worked. 4. Sesame Street. Sesame Street revolutionized children's television by creating an urban neighborhood where diversity wasn't just present, but celebrated. For black kids in the 1970s, seeing characters like Gordon, Susan, and later Roosevelt Franklin meant seeing black adults portrayed as intelligent, caring, and important members of the community. The show featured black musicians, celebrities, and everyday people as regular guests, normalizing black excellence for children of all races. You learned your letters and numbers alongside lessons about getting along with people who were different from you, about asking questions, and about being curious about the world. The Muppets were universally loved, but the human cast members showed you what integrated community could look like. Roosevelt Franklin's segments, taught by a black Muppet in a style that reflected black educational traditions, felt specifically designed to reach black children. Parents felt comfortable letting you watch Sesame Street because it was educational, entertaining, and reflected values they wanted to instill. The show didn't talk down to children or pretend that urban poverty didn't exist. It showed a neighborhood that looked familiar while teaching that learning was fun and important. You absorbed reading readiness, math concepts, and social skills without realizing you were being taught. And you did it while seeing yourself represented as valuable and intelligent. 5. The Electric Company. After you aged out of Sesame Street, The Electric Company took over as the educational show that felt cool enough to watch. Launched in 1971, the show used sketch comedy, music, and animation to teach reading skills to elementary school children. The cast included Rita Moreno, Bill Cosby, and Morgan Freeman in his Spider-Man segment, no less, providing representation and talent that made learning feel important. For black kids, seeing Bill Cosby and later Irene Cara among the regular cast meant seeing black performers in educational roles that valued intelligence and creativity. The show tackled reading in ways that felt hip and relevant, using humor and music to make phonics and vocabulary exciting. You remember the Silhouettes doing their smooth musical numbers, Spider-Man reading his way out of situations, and the various recurring sketches that made words come alive. Parents encouraged you to watch because it supported what you were learning in school, but you watched because it was genuinely entertaining. The Electric Company showed that being smart was cool, that reading opened doors, and that black performers could excel in educational entertainment. The show respected its audience enough to be funny without being silly, educational without being boring, and diverse without making diversity the point. It was just naturally inclusive in ways that felt revolutionary for the time. 6. Soul Train. Technically not a cartoon, but Soul Train was absolutely essential viewing for black kids on Saturday mornings in the 1970s. After the cartoons ended, you stayed glued to the television for Don Cornelius and the hippest trip in America. Soul Train wasn't made specifically for children, but black kids watched it religiously because it was a weekly celebration of black music, dance, and style that you couldn't find anywhere else on television. You studied the dancers' moves, memorized the artists' performances, and absorbed fashion trends that you'd try to replicate with whatever clothes you had. The Soul Train line was appointment television, with families gathering to watch dancers showcase their best moves while traveling between two lines of cheering people. Don Cornelius's smooth voice and cool demeanor made him a role model of black excellence and sophistication. You learned about new music before radio played it out, discovered dance moves that you'd practice all week, and witnessed black culture being celebrated on a national platform. Parents watched alongside kids, making Soul Train a multi-generational experience that brought families together. The show proved that black culture deserved its own platform, that our music and dance were important enough for weekly television time, and that being black was something to celebrate with pride. Soul Train wasn't just a show, it was a cultural institution that shaped how you understood black identity and excellence. 7. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Mr. Rogers' gentle presence and commitment to treating children with respect transcended race, but his show held special meaning for black kids in the 1970s, particularly through his friendship with Officer Clemens, played by Francois Clemens. In 1969, during the height of segregation disputes over public pools, Mr. Rogers invited Officer Clemens to share his footbath, a quiet but powerful statement about integration and equality. For black children watching, seeing a black man portrayed as an officer, a position of authority and respect, mattered deeply. Mr. Rogers spoke directly to you through the television, making you feel seen and valued regardless of your race or circumstances. He tackled difficult topics like death, divorce, and anger with honesty and gentleness that helped you process complicated emotions. The neighborhood of make-believe featured diverse puppets and characters who treated each other with kindness and respect, modeling the world as it should be rather than as it was. Parents appreciated that Mr. Rogers taught emotional intelligence and self-worth, values that were especially important for black children growing up in a world that didn't always value them. You learned that your feelings mattered, that you were special just as you were, and that adults could be trusted to tell you the truth in ways you could understand. Mr. Rogers showed that children's television could be slow, thoughtful, and meaningful, offering a counterbalance to the faster-paced cartoons while teaching lessons about humanity that transcended entertainment. 8. Captain Kangaroo. Captain Kangaroo represented wholesome, gentle children's television that black families embraced as safe and educational programming. Bob Keeshan's kind demeanor and the show's creative segments featuring Mr. Moose, Bunny Rabbit, and the Treasure House made weekday mornings special before school. While the show wasn't specifically diverse in its casting, it was inclusive in its message, treating all children as intelligent and worthy of respect. You watched Captain Kangaroo read stories, demonstrate crafts, and teach lessons about nature and science in ways that felt warm and personal. The show didn't rely on fast-paced action or loud noises. It trusted that children could pay attention to slower, more thoughtful content. Parents loved Captain Kangaroo because it kept you occupied while they prepared breakfast and got ready for work. But you loved it because it felt like spending time with a kind adult who genuinely cared about children. The show taught patience, curiosity, and imagination, values that transcended race and culture. For black kids in the 1970s, Captain Kangaroo was part of the morning routine, a gentle way to start the day before heading off to school, and a reminder that not all television had to be loud or flashy to be meaningful. 9. Big Blue Marble. Big Blue Marble was a show that expanded your understanding of the world by featuring children from different countries and cultures, sharing their lives and experiences. For black kids in the 1970s, the show was revolutionary because it showed that children everywhere faced similar challenges and joys, regardless of their location or appearance. The program featured segments filmed in various countries, showing how kids lived, played, and learned around the globe. You saw children who looked different, spoke different languages, and lived in different circumstances, but you recognized their fundamental humanity and childhood experiences. The show's message of global citizenship and mutual understanding resonated with black families who understood what it meant to be judged unfairly and who valued teaching their children about the wider world. Big Blue Marble encouraged pen-pal relationships between American children and kids from other countries, fostering connections that some viewers maintained for years. The show's theme song about the Earth being a big blue marble, filled with people taught you that despite differences, we all shared the same planet and deserved respect and understanding. For black children learning to navigate a society that often marginalized them, Big Blue Marble provided perspective that your experiences were part of a larger human story, that children everywhere deserved kindness and opportunity, and that the world was bigger and more diverse than your immediate neighborhood. 10. Speed Racer. Speed Racer brought Japanese anime to American audiences, and black kids in the 1970s embraced the fast-paced racing action and family drama that defined each episode. The distinctive animation style, memorable characters like Racer X and Trixie, and that incredible Mach 5 car with all its gadgets made the show addictive viewing. You memorized the theme song and sang it at full volume, mimicking the rapid-fire lyrics that matched the show's frenetic energy. Speed Racer represented adventure, technology, and family loyalty in ways that transcended cultural boundaries. The fact that the characters were Japanese didn't matter. The stories of racing, rivalry, and relationships were universal. You rooted for Speed to win races, solve mysteries, and protect his family from various villains. The show introduced you to storytelling traditions from another culture, expanding your understanding that good entertainment could come from anywhere. Parents might have found the show confusing with its complex plots and sometimes unclear translation, but kids loved the speed, action, and emotional stakes of each episode. Speed Racer showed that heroes could look different from what American television typically presented, that families could be complicated but loving, and that animation could tackle more mature themes than most Saturday morning fare attempted. 11 Banana Splits. The Banana Splits Adventure Hour was pure chaotic fun, featuring 4 costumed animal characters, Fleagle, Bingo, Drooper, and Snorky, who hosted a variety show mixing live-action adventure serials with cartoon segments. For black kids in the 1970s, the show represented silly, energetic entertainment that didn't require deep thought or cultural analysis. It was just fun. The theme song was impossibly catchy, and you knew all the words even if they didn't always make complete sense. The show within a show format meant you got multiple types of entertainment in one program, from the Banana Splits antics to serialized adventures like Danger Island. You laughed at the slapstick humor, followed the adventure serials, and absorbed the cartoons that filled out the hour. The Banana Splits proved that entertainment could be absurd and still be beloved, that not everything needed a lesson or meaning, and that sometimes kids just wanted to watch characters have fun. Parents might have found the show annoying with its loud music and hyperactive energy, but kids loved exactly those qualities. The Banana Splits represented childhood joy in its purest form, uncomplicated, energetic, and designed purely to entertain. 12 Ultraman. Ultraman brought Japanese superhero action to American television, and black kids in the 1970s were fascinated by the giant hero fighting equally giant monsters in elaborately staged battles. The show featured special effects that looked homemade, but were creative and exciting, with actors in rubber suits wrestling in miniature cities that they destroyed during epic fights. Ultraman's color timer that beeped faster as his energy depleted added tension to every battle, making you worry that he might not win this time. The show introduced you to kaiju, giant monsters culture, and demonstrated that superhero stories existed outside of American comic books. You loved the transformation sequence when Hayata became Ultraman, the special moves that defeated different monsters, and the science patrol team that supported the hero. Ultraman showed that special effects didn't need to be realistic to be effective, that storytelling could transcend language barriers, the dubbing was often hilariously bad, and that heroes came in all forms from all cultures. The show expanded your imagination beyond what American television typically offered, showing that adventure and heroism were universal concepts that different cultures could interpret in wildly different but equally entertaining ways. 13. The New Fat Albert Show. As Fat Albert evolved through the 1970s, the show maintained its commitment to teaching valuable lessons while entertaining black children who saw themselves in the characters. Later seasons tackled more complex issues like teenage pregnancy, drug abuse, and gang violence, recognizing that black kids in urban neighborhoods faced challenges that needed honest discussion. The show never talked down to its audience, trusting that children could handle difficult subjects when presented with empathy and care. You learned about consequences, about making good choices even when they were hard, and about the importance of real friendship. The Junkyard Gang remained relatable because they made mistakes, dealt with real problems, and didn't always have easy solutions. Parents appreciated that Fat Albert addressed issues they might not have known how to discuss, while kids appreciated that the show treated them as intelligent enough to understand complex situations. The animation quality might not have been Disney level, but the writing and character development were top-notch. Fat Albert showed that black children deserved entertainment that reflected their reality, that cartoons could tackle serious subjects without losing their humor, and that representation meant showing both the joys and challenges of Black urban life. 14. Josie and the Pussycats. Josie and the Pussycats featured a multiracial girl group traveling the world having adventures, and for Black kids in the 1970s, seeing Valerie Brown as a smart, talented, equal member of the band mattered enormously. Valerie was voiced by Barbara Perriott and later by Sherry Alberoni, but her character represented one of the few Black female characters in Saturday morning cartoons who wasn't a stereotype or sidekick. She played tambourine, contributed to solving mysteries, and was treated as an integral part of the group. The show featured catchy music, exotic locations, and mysteries that the Pussycats solved while trying to make it big as musicians. You sang along with the songs, enjoyed the adventures, and appreciated seeing a Black girl portrayed as cool, capable, and valued by her friends. Valerie's natural hairstyle reflected the era's embrace of Black beauty, and her intelligence and musical talent showed Black girls that they could be part of successful, integrated groups. The show demonstrated that diversity could be normalized rather than made into a special issue, that Black characters could exist in mainstream entertainment without their race being their defining characteristic, and that representation in cartoons helped Black children see themselves as part of the larger American story. 15. Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? While not specifically a Black show, Scooby-Doo was beloved by Black kids in the 1970s for its mysteries, humor, and the found family of teenagers who solved crimes together. You watched the Mystery Machine arrive at spooky locations, followed the gang as they split up to search for clues, and tried to guess which seemingly supernatural villain would be revealed as someone in a mask at the end. Scooby and Shaggy's cowardly antics provided comic relief, while Fred, Daphne, and Velma handled the actual investigating. You memorized Scooby's catchphrases, laughed at the ridiculous disguises and traps, and appreciated that teenage characters were portrayed as competent and heroic. The show's formula was predictable but comforting. You knew how each episode would end, but the journey there was always entertaining. Black kids enjoyed Scooby-Doo because it represented adventure, friendship, and the triumph of logic over fear. The show taught that most monsters were just people trying to scare others for personal gain, that working together solved problems, and that being smart was valuable even in a silly cartoon about a talking dog. Scooby-Doo was part of the Saturday morning lineup that Black families counted on for wholesome entertainment that everyone could enjoy together. 16. Hong Kong Phooey. Hong Kong Phooey featured Penrod Penry Pooch, a mild-mannered police station janitor who transformed into a kung fu fighting superhero, and Black kids in the 1970s heard him as voiced by Scatman Crothers, a Black actor whose distinctive voice made the character special. The show aired in 1974 during the martial arts craze sparked by Bruce Lee, and it combined that trend with superhero action and comedy. Hong Kong Phooey was hilariously incompetent, usually succeeding by accident while his cat Spot did the actual work, but his confidence and enthusiasm made him lovable. You laughed at his bungling attempts to fight crime, his consultation with the Hong Kong Book of Kung Fu, and his transformation sequence in the filing cabinet. The show was silly and self-aware, playing with superhero tropes while providing action and humor. Hearing a Black voice actor play the lead in a cartoon superhero show mattered to Black kids even if the character himself was a dog. Hong Kong Phooey showed that Black talent belonged in animation, that martial arts could be fun rather than just serious, and that heroes didn't have to be perfect to be beloved. The show's theme song was catchy enough that you sang it long after the episode ended, and Hong Kong Phooey's earnest attempts to save the day, despite his incompetence, taught you that effort and good intentions counted for something. 17. The Brady Kids. The Brady Kids animated the beloved Brady Bunch family, and while the show wasn't specifically about Black culture, it was part of the Saturday morning lineup that Black kids watched regularly. The animated Brady siblings had adventures with their magical bird friends and occasionally broke into song, providing light-hearted entertainment that continued the family-friendly appeal of the live-action show. Black families who watched the Brady Bunch saw an idealized version of American family life that didn't often include people who looked like them, but the values of family unity, problem-solving and kindness were universal enough to resonate. The cartoon allowed the Brady Kids to have more fantastical adventures than the live-action show permitted, adding magical elements and exotic locations to their exploits. You might have wished to see yourself represented in the Brady family, or wondered why integrated families weren't shown as normal, but you still enjoyed the adventures and music. The Brady Kids represented mainstream American entertainment that Black families consumed, while also seeking out programming that specifically reflected their own experiences. The show demonstrated that entertainment could be enjoyable even when it didn't directly represent you, but it also highlighted the importance of shows like Fat Albert that did center Black experiences.
If your favorite cartoon isn't on this list, share it in the comments.
These cartoons and programs filled Saturday mornings and weekday afternoons with entertainment, education, and representation that shaped how you understood yourself and the world. For Black kids in the 1970s, television was one of the few places where you could see characters who looked like you, dealt with situations you recognized, and showed that your stories mattered. Shows like Fat Albert and the Jackson 5 centered Black experiences, while programs like Sesame Street and The Electric Company featured diverse casts that showed integrated communities as normal and desirable. Even shows that weren't specifically about Black culture became part of your routine because they provided quality entertainment that transcended race. You learned lessons about friendship, problem-solving, reading, math, and social responsibility while being thoroughly entertained. These shows weren't perfect, representation was still limited, and stereotypes occasionally appeared, but they represented progress and provided cultural touchstones that connected you to other Black kids across the country who were watching the same programs. Saturday morning television was a ritual that defined childhood, and these shows were the content of that ritual. Looking back, you remember not just the shows themselves, but the feeling of those mornings, the cereal bowls, the comfortable spot on the floor or couch, the shared experience with siblings, and the knowledge that kids in houses across the neighborhood were watching the same thing at the same time. These cartoons and programs were more than just entertainment. They were the building blocks of cultural memory, the source of shared references, and proof that Black stories and Black audiences mattered enough to be served by television, even if imperfectly. The shows that defined your Saturday mornings defined a part of who you became, and remembering them now brings back not just the shows themselves, but the feeling of being a Black child in the 1970s when the world was changing and your culture was demanding to be seen, heard, and celebrated.